The presentation is broken up into 3 parts. So the first part, we're going to talk more about the physiology, the how the gut and hormones are connected. Second part, I'll get into some testing. And last part, we'll discuss treatment options and actionable items, things that you guys can take home and get started right away. So I'll pause after each section, give you guys a chance to ask questions. I want this to be interactive. You took an hour out of your day to be here, so please ask all your questions. If you are at work and can't speak, put it in the chat box and I'll read your questions and try to answer. Okay, so we are going to get started. I'm just going to take a few minutes and explain what a naturopathic doctor does if you are not familiar with that. So naturopathic medicine is a 4-year postgraduate program. After undergraduate, you go to a 4-year naturopathic medical school. There are 5 accredited schools in the US and 2 in Canada. So once you graduate from one of the accredited schools, residencies are not required, but most of us will do some sort of apprenticeship or some sort of a residency, a supervision. I did my residency in a family practice clinic in Pasadena. And then we sit for a national licensing board exam. So I am licensed in the state of California. Naturopathic licenses are regulated by state. So the scope of our practice depends on what state we are in. So California naturopathic doctors are licensed fully as family medicine docs. So it's a really nice blend. We can prescribe certain medications if and when necessary. You also need prescription rights in order to wean people off of medications if that's the goal and that's what you're working towards. But then we also have an entire toolbox of diet, nutrition therapy, homeopathy, herbs, counseling, physical therapy, lifestyle medicine, biohacking, etc. So most of us will prefer to dip into that toolbox before we go to pharmaceuticals, although that does become necessary sometimes. Okay, so let's dive right into the gut hormone connection, since that's what you guys are here for. So these are the signs of poor gut health, pretty obvious. Bloating, diarrhea, constipation, celiac disease, ulcers, IBS, IBD. If you're diagnosed with one of these, you know you have a gut health issue. These are the more subtle signs of poor gut health. This is not, you don't automatically think gut health if you have autoimmune conditions, eczema, acne, mood swings, PMS. If you have autoimmune conditions, you're going to see a rheumatologist. If you have eczema, you're going to see a dermatologist. But what do all of these have in common? Gut health. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So this is just a brief overview of what we're going to dive into. Why is gut health important? Why are gut and hormones connected? The gut is where you absorb your essential building blocks, estrogen metabolism and elimination, major site of thyroid hormone activation, elimination, and communicates with the brain. And we're going to learn how in just a second. So Dr. Brighton, if you've never heard of her, she's a naturopathic doctor, does some great, she's an excellent resource. If you're taking notes, write her name down. She has some great books out there. And she has a quote that says, "You are not what you eat, but you are what you absorb." And why is this important? Because all of the building blocks for your hormones comes from your gut, comes from what you're eating. So if you're suffering from low stomach acid, if you're suffering from constantly being constipated or bloated, if you have gallbladder issues, any of the gut health issues we talked about, then you're not breaking down the nutrients. If you're not breaking down your nutrients, you could have a subclinical nutrient deficiency, which could result in low hormone production. Gut and estrogen. So if you're following me on Instagram, I talk about this a lot. How are gut and estrogen connected? And so this is how we're getting into it. So in a healthy body, in a healthy microbiome, your ovaries produce your estrogen, distributes it to the rest of the body, does its work, goes to the liver. The liver, we're going to come back to the liver a lot. So the liver, think of your liver as your garbage collection. The liver is what metabolizes your hormones, metabolizes your toxins, neutralizes them, and then marks them for excretion or deletion or, to discard, sends them on their way to the garbage truck to get rid of. That's when your gut comes in. Your gut is a major source of elimination. Some estrogen, to maintain balance, naturally gets reabsorbed back into the gut. Most of the estrogen and toxins, though, need to be eliminated. How does that happen? Your gut microbiome, which is the good bacteria in your gut, as long as they are in proper balance, they produce an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. If that enzyme is in balance, if your gut is healthy, most of the estrogen will be eliminated. A small portion will be recycled to maintain that healthy balance. In a imbalanced gut where you don't have proper microbiome, you could be producing extra beta-glucuronidase or less beta-glucuronidase. If you're producing too much estrogen gets recycled, which means all the estrogen that was marked for elimination now gets reabsorbed back into your body. Remember, those ovaries are still producing estrogen as well. But now you're getting extra estrogen reabsorbed back from your gut, resulting in symptoms of estrogen dominance. On the flip side, if you didn't have enough of that enzyme, everything gets eliminated, nothing gets reabsorbed back, also affecting the balance of estrogen, and you get symptoms of low estrogen. Now, this is not the only reason for estrogen dominance and low estrogen, but this is one of the main reasons tied into gut health. So some symptoms of estrogen dominance: breast swelling, regular heavy periods, water retention, headaches, migraines, fibrocystic breast changes, weight gain, mood swings, hair loss, PMS. And then we have, on the other side, the low estrogen symptoms. So that's how your gut is connected to estrogen. So that's how when people say gut health affects PCOS, gut health affects endometriosis, gut health affects PMS, gut health affects the severity of your menopause or perimenopausal symptoms. This is why. Thyroid. Now, this is a cyclical relationship. So I briefly mentioned that the activation of thyroid hormone, T4 is your inactive hormone, T3 is your active hormone, happens in the gut. It happens elsewhere as well, but a major portion happens in your gut. Thyroid hormone is also responsible for your digestion. Thyroid hormone is responsible for motility, for stomach acid production. If you have low thyroid hormone, you get decreased motility, decreased stomach acid production. If your gut is not working well, you have decreased thyroid hormone. So you see that cyclical relationship that keeps it going, which is why if you're supplementing thyroid hormone, it's also important to look at your gut health and make sure that you're actually addressing the root cause. Otherwise, you're just putting a patch, just taking that hormone, but not addressing the root cause. Cortisol and leaky gut. Cortisol is your stress hormone. You've all heard of flight or fight response. Cortisol is the hormone that's actually responsible for keeping you safe. So when you slam on your brakes because somebody in front of you slams on theirs, that's cortisol keeping you safe. When you're running from a bear, that's cortisol keeping you safe. But what happens for most of us is that we get stuck in that flight or fight response. We get stuck in that cortisol loop for daily matters. Your body can no longer distinguish if a bear is chasing you or if you're stressed about your kid's schedule. Are you stressed about what to make for dinner every night, or are you trying to prevent an accident? When we get into that perpetual loop of increased high cortisol, that's when your body gets inflamed. Small amounts of inflammation are necessary and important for healing. Small amounts of inflammation are part of your immune system. But when that system runs haywire, that's when we get chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation, leaky gut, you hear that term a lot, is what affects your gut barrier. And this is how. So if you look at the normal tight junctions, and you see this diagram that says normal tight junction, this little protein, that's the glue that keeps your gut cells together to maintain that integrity, that gut barrier integrity. Remember this, because we're going to talk about this later. This little protein is called zonulin, and this is responsible for maintaining that integrity. But chronic inflammation breaks down that protein, dissolves that glue. So now there's big gaps between your gut cells. As a result, toxins, food particles, etc., that should not be entering your bloodstream, that should be digested and marked for elimination through the gut, are now starting to get absorbed into the gut. This is the basis for autoimmune condition. So if you're suffering from autoimmune thyroiditis like Hashimoto's or Graves', psoriasis, eczema, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, this is the basis for autoimmune condition. Because when these foreign proteins, these proteins that should be marked for elimination, enter into our bloodstream, our immune system recognizes it as foreign and starts to attack it. Additionally, other causes of leaky gut, other causes of gut health, what breaks down your gut barrier is certain medications, long-term steroid use, long-term things like ibuprofen or Motrin. If you're constantly popping ibuprofen or Motrin to help with menstrual cramping, headaches, migraines, that affects the gut barrier. Long-term birth control usage, chronic alcohol use, of course, acute and chronic stress, we talked about that, and poor diet. And when I say poor diet, I'm talking about trans fats, processed foods, anything that's inflammatory that contributes to that chronic inflammation. And lastly, but definitely not the least, endocrine disruptors, xenoestrogens. I'm sure you hear about this term a lot. Use organic products, use cleaner products. Is it a fad? Is it something that we really should be investing more money on? And yes, we absolutely should be. BPA, triclosan, phthalates, these are all substances that are found all over your house in all your everyday products. And what they do is that they trick the body into thinking that they're hormones. So xenoestrogen is a term that's used for chemical estrogen or external estrogen. So any product that contains fragrances like perfumes, fragrance soaps, candles are and candles and air fresheners and those Glade plugins that people use in their house are probably the worst. Those are all xenoestrogens that mimic estrogen in your body and can also contribute to the estrogen dominance. So if your gut health is not good, if your liver health is not good, and you are already backed up, nobody can prevent all of this. Just by living in an industrialized world, we will all be exposed to some of these chemicals. But the goal is to make sure that all the systems in our body are working efficiently to eliminate the small amounts we get. And then it's our job to kind of prevent us from getting that exposure in the first place. Okay, before we go into the next phase, does anybody have any questions about the how and how gut-brain, how the gut and hormone system is connected? Any questions about anything that we talked about? There's no back questions. Feel free to jump in. Nobody? Okay, we'll keep moving on then. And if you think of questions that come up, you can put it in the chat box. Let's see. Okay. So the second half of this class, we're going to focus on, okay, so you have these symptoms and you maybe have some bloating and some constipation going on. Most of us have some chronic stress going on. Most of us have, you're starting to get into that perimenopausal stage and maybe you're starting to experience some symptoms. So how do we know? How do we get to that root cause? How do we test these things that we just talked about? So the number one test for inflammation, stress is cortisol. We talked about cortisol being your stress hormone. The way I like to test cortisol is a saliva test. You can do it in blood, but Cortisol is a diurnal hormone, which means that it follows a rhythm. In the morning, it needs to be high because you need to wake up. If your cortisol was low in the morning, you wouldn't have that surge to wake up and get your day going. You'd be tired, you'd be fatigued, you'd be dragging. But then throughout the day, your cortisol levels should even out and they should be low at night, allowing you to fall asleep. If you do a blood test first thing in the morning and you get a healthy cortisol in the morning, you don't know what your cortisol did the rest of the day. You don't know if it spiked abnormally high at night and it's interfering with your sleep. You don't know if it crashed in the middle of the day and it's contributing to your midday fatigue. This is why I like to get a saliva test or a dried urine test, which allows you to take 4 to 6 samples, depending on the test throughout the day, to measure what this hormone is doing. So if you look on the left, that is a graph of a person who is chronic fatigue. Actually, that first dot, the black dot that you see that's kind of high, in a chronic fatigue state would actually be at the bottom. You would see that you wouldn't see a curve, you would see a flat line. And then in a chronic stress state, which is usually the first stages of, say you're dealing with a stressful situation, in the initial stages, your cortisol will be through the roof. It'll be off the charts, off the curve, high. And then over time, it flatlines. Now, these are textbook curves, and we rarely see this. Most of the time, most people are somewhere in between in the gray zone where their cortisol is spiking really high at night, which means they can't sleep, or they're having frequent wakings, or they're sleeping, but they're not getting restful sleep, so they're still waking up exhausted. Or what I often see is the day starts out okay, but then around that 3 o'clock, that period, around that third point, you see the cortisol drops really low, which is why often I hear patients saying, I can't keep going unless I have that third cup of coffee in the middle of the day, or I need a nap in the middle of the day. But then you see their cortisol spike at night and they can't fall asleep. So this curve can be really helpful in identifying what you want to treat, how you want to treat, and what part of the day you want to treat it in. Thyroid. Again, I talk about this a lot. Most conventional doctors will only check TSH and free T4. And what they do is reflex to T3, which means that if your TSH is abnormal or if your T4 is abnormal, then the lab will automatically check a T3. Well, we know now, a lot of the research is now showing that T3 and thyroid antibodies often rise before T4 and TSH go out. So if you're waiting for the TSH and T4 to go out of range or out of balance, you're already too late. By then, there is nothing you can do other than supplement with thyroid hormone. But if you start addressing it early on, if you check your thyroid antibodies and you have Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune thyroiditis, where your body is attacking your thyroid gland, then everything that we talked about today in terms of gut health can be applied and can be treated, hopefully to reverse some of your Hashimoto's before you get to the point where your thyroid starts to burn out. And even if you get to the point where you might need to take some thyroid medication, addressing all those root causes will help you stabilize your thyroid function and stop you from having to go up and up and up in your thyroid medication. So this is what a complete thyroid panel looks like, and this is very easy to request from your PCP as well, because this is a simple blood test. Hormones. I love this hormone test. This test, again, similarly to cortisol, when you check your hormones in blood, and I'm not saying there's no value in that test. There is value in blood testing as well. And sometimes when you're in your late stages of perimenopause and menopause and you're not cycling, a simple blood test is all that's needed. But remember, again, your hormones change on a daily basis and on an hourly basis. So if you are checking blood, one point in time, you're not getting an accurate picture of what your hormones are doing or what your symptoms are doing. Dried urine or saliva testing, you take a sample daily throughout your cycle, and then you get a graph like the one that's on your computer screen that shows you exactly what your hormones are doing. So for example, that in that early phase, that is your follicular phase. That is when everything is building up. Your body is getting ready to release that egg. So your estrogen should go up. Your progesterone will be low at that point. Once you ovulate, when that egg gets released, then in the luteal phase, your estrogen should kind of even out and your progesterone should spike, because then your body is either getting ready for a pregnancy or your body is getting ready for a period. This will show me where the deficiency lies. So for example, we talked about estrogen dominance earlier. We talked about symptoms of estrogen dominance, conditions like PCOS or endometriosis that can have estrogen dominance. But what is the root cause of that estrogen dominance? Is the root cause of the estrogen dominance that you have too much xenoestrogen exposure? You're using too many products and your liver is backed up and you're not eliminating the estrogen? Is the root cause of the estrogen the fact that your gut health is poor? So even though your liver marks the estrogen for excretion, you're recycling it and absorbing too much of it? Or is the root cause of your estrogen dominance the fact that you have a relative progesterone deficiency? See, the treatment would be completely different. Am I targeting the liver? Am I targeting the gut? Or am I easily supplementing you with a little bit of progesterone herbally or bioidentically to balance out your estrogen? And this is why the testing, this hormone test, can provide such valuable information. And my favorite test, the microbiome and the gut. The comprehensive stool analysis. Again, if you're following me on Instagram, you hear me talk a lot about the comprehensive stool analysis. And what this test does, in addition, I mean, this test does a lot. Since I'm focusing on gut and hormone today, I'm mostly showing you the snippets of the test that focus on hormone health. But what this test does it tells me about your commensal and keystone bacteria in your gut, any opportunistic overgrowths, like any infections, not even acute infections, but just an imbalance in your own gut flora that could be causing an infection, parasitic infections. It also tells me about your digestive function, digestive enzymes. And then it tells me about leaky gut. So if you remember on this slide, we talked about this protein, the tight junction protein, zonulin. This gut test can measure zonulin. So if you have a high amount of zonulin in your stool, that is one indicator of the fact that you are losing that protein, which means that your gut barrier integrity is not intact. On this screen, what you are seeing is high bacterial markers that could be indicative of high beta-glucuronidase activity, which is that enzyme that they produce for estrogen recycling and estrogen excretion, and that could be affecting estrogen dominance. And on this page, you're seeing that how low levels of good bacteria could also affect estrogen dominance. Okay. All right. Time for another pause. Questions? Guys must have some questions.
I have a question, Nadia.
Yes, please.
It's Anita. How does one improve the zonulin in?
Oh, fantastic question. We're going to get into that in the next phase when we talk about treatment for gut health.
All right, that was a segue.
Thank you. Let's see something in chat. What if our doctor does not prescribe these tests? Yeah, that's a great question, Jaru. Most of these functional medicine tests, you're going to have to find a functional medicine practitioner or a naturopathic doctor in your area. I know you're in Canada, so I know there's naturopathic doctors that are licensed in Canada, and they should have access to these tests. The comprehensive stool analysis of the GI map is available in Canada. The saliva testing and I'm pretty sure the Dutch test, which is a hormone test, is also available in Canada. So I would highly urge you to find a licensed naturopathic doctor. I don't know where you are. I think you're in Toronto. They do, yes, you would have to get a functional medicine practitioner or a naturopath here in Toronto to prescribe these for you. There is a company called Rupa Health, which allows you to order some of your own testing, but I'm not sure if they're in Canada. So you would have to speak to a licensed person there to get that answer. Anyone else? Okay, let's get to the treatment part. Is there another question? Sorry. What's the other test you just mentioned? I mentioned a GI map, which is the comprehensive stool analysis, cortisol testing, and Dutch testing. Dutch testing is dried urine for hormones. I recently learned it is very challenging to get some of these tests from primary doctors. Definitely recommend going through your naturopath. Yep. Okay, so we'll move on. There we go. So improving gut health. We're going to start with the basics. Fiber, fiber, fiber. So think of fiber as the garbage truck, right? You want the liver metabolizes and neutralizes toxins and hormones and marks them for excretion. They then go to the gut and they ride on the dump truck all the way out. Fiber is your dump truck. If you have fiber, it will bind those toxins and get rid of them. So most of the people in this group, I think, are about 35 and above. So for most of us, an excellent source of fiber for most of us women will be flaxseed. Why? Flaxseed not only provides fiber, but it's also a phytoestrogen, which means that it is a healthy plant estrogen and it's a weak estrogen, which means that it also binds to the same estrogen receptors in your body, and it competitively crowds out the bad estrogen and the xenoestrogens that we may be exposed to and taking in. So soy is not a high fiber food, but soy is also a phytoestrogenic food, and it's a great source. And flaxseed is kind of a double benefit. You get the fiber as well as the phytoestrogenic benefits. I will caution you, if your gut is not in the best condition or if you're not eating enough fiber, sometimes flax seeds can cause stomach upset. So start slow and move up. 2 tablespoons of ground flax is what most of the research shows. So you can make flax. You can look up recipes for flax muffins. You can add it to smoothies. You can sprinkle it on your salads. You can mix it into non-dairy or dairy yogurt, depending on what you're doing. I will say it's ground flaxseed, not whole flaxseed. And the best way to make flaxseed is to do it at home. You can buy a $20 coffee grinder and just ground your flaxseed fresh once a week and keep it refrigerated. So flaxseed has a lot of oils, flax oil. You've heard about flax oil, but flax oil is not what we want. We want ground flaxseed. But because of the high content of oil, it can go rancid very quickly. So in a pinch, you can buy the ground flaxseed at the grocery store, but we don't know how long it's been sitting on the shelf, and we don't know what its quality is. So grinding it fresh and keeping it, you can store it in the freezer and then just take out small portions of it and refrigerate, but that will be the best way to get it. Another excellent form of fiber are raspberries and blackberries. A cup of raspberries and blackberries will give you about 8 grams of fiber, which is actually way more than you would have to eat an entire bowl of broccoli to get that amount of fiber. But the benefit to raspberries and blackberries is that they're also high in polyphenols, which is an excellent prebiotic and an excellent food for your gut microbiome. And they're also very high in antioxidants, and they're a low glycemic fruit. So for most of us, if we have cortisol imbalances, hormone imbalances, we want to be very careful of blood sugar imbalances. And we're not getting into that today, but you want to avoid any of the high glycemic foods. So high glycemic fruits like bananas, mangoes, pineapples, melons, those are the fruits that are going to spike your blood sugar and will further create an imbalance in your cortisol. So if you want to eat fruits, you're sticking to berries, this kind of gives you a double benefit. Chia seeds, pears, nuts and seeds, lentils, beans, these are just some sources of fiber. But you can see in order to get 30 grams of fiber, that's a lot of fiber you have to eat. So sometimes you have to supplement if you can't get enough, but fiber is the #1 way to improve your gut bacteria, to improve your liver, and to keep that garbage truck moving. Think of it as fuel for your garbage truck. Prebiotic foods and polyphenols. This is something we touched on a little bit. Polyphenols is kind of a compound that's being studied a lot right now. And it's for gut health. It's food for your gut microbiome. So depending on what comes back on your stool test, if you're low in certain types of bacteria, one of the best ways to improve them and balance them is to increase your polyphenol intake. So that is things like raw unsweetened cacao, or if you're eating 85% or 90% dark chocolate, that can count. Or adding cocoa powder to your smoothies, to your anything that you can think of. Now, I'm not talking about milk chocolate or candy or sweetened, drinking chocolate mixes. I'm talking about unsweetened cocoa. You can use it to bake, or you can use it to add to your smoothies. Green tea is an excellent source of polyphenols, and then all your green vegetables, all your colorful vegetables, green vegetables, blue fruits and vegetables, blueberries, blackberries, and your red food group, which is pomegranate, cranberries, and cherries. Those are also very high in polyphenols. So pomegranate actually is an excellent source. Unsweetened cranberry or cranberry juice, that could be another excellent source of polyphenols and a way to feed your healthy gut bacteria. And then liver supportive foods. Remember, if your liver is backed up, then nothing gets metabolized, nothing gets marked for excretion. So you can't treat the gut without treating the liver. You have to make sure that your liver is optimized. And the way to do that with foods is all the liver supportive foods are the cruciferous vegetables: cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, arugula, Brussels sprouts, kale, onions, garlic, beets, dandelion greens. Dandelion is an excellent herb for liver health as well. Okay, in terms of supplements, so I'm going to kind of touch upon supplements generically. Obviously, they are extremely individualized and depending on the test results, but I did want to give you some idea of what type of supplements. Milk thistle is the kind of the golden herb for liver health. Calcium D-glucarate is something I use. It is really important for the hormone balance. And again, it depends on your testing that comes back. But calcium D-glucarate is one that can inhibit the beta-glucuronidase activity. So remember that enzyme we talked about in the gut that helps recycle or eliminate your estrogen? If that enzyme is out of balance, then calcium D-glucarate is a helpful supplement that you can use. And it usually comes in combination with DIM or indole 3-carbinol, if you've heard of those. Those are compounds that are extracted from broccoli and these liver supportive foods that we talked about. But if you can't eat enough, or if you need extra, you can supplement it. But that just helps with the metabolism. Remember, you don't need supplements. Supplements are a Band-Aid. If you can heal your gut through food and through lifestyle suggestions, those will be what's getting to the actual root cause. Supplements can be very helpful in the midst to bridge that gap. And then dandelion. I put down Dandy Blend. Dandy Blend is easily available on Amazon. It's an organic powder that you can get, and it's a drink. So often I will have my patients try to eliminate their afternoon caffeine, their afternoon coffee and tea. It's touted as a coffee substitute. I don't think it tastes like coffee, but it's kind of a nice drink. And it's a blend of chicory root and dandelion. You can mix it in milk, you can mix it in water, and it makes for a nice coffee substitute. And it is also liver supportive and helps support the elimination and neutralization process. Supplements to support gut health. Every time I create this slide, it feels like I come up with different supplements, but really, because there's so many things that can be used to support gut health, and I often use a combination product. But if I were to pick three, these would be my top three. Glutamine is probably the most studied nutrient for healing gut barrier integrity. DGL is licorice. Licorice is an excellent herb. It's been used by herbalists for years. Licorice contains it contains a component called glycyrrhizin, which is a steroid. So if you are so you need to be careful with licorice. DGL is deglycyrrhizinated licorice, which means that steroidal component has been removed, making it fairly safe for almost everyone to use. DGL is excellent if you are also experiencing any symptoms of high stomach acid or acid reflux. It really coats the gut. Slippery elm is another herb that kind of does something similar. It coats the gut and allows the glutamine to heal the gut. So they work in synergy. And curcumin, I think everyone has pretty much heard about turmeric for now. Curcumin is the kind of the extract from turmeric that has that anti-inflammatory component. Excellent for, dosed correctly, it can be excellent for any kind of chronic inflammatory conditions. Managing stress and anxiety. And I put root cause on here because you guys, we can talk, remember we talked about high cortisol causing inflammation, but high cortisol is not a root cause. Your hormones being out of balance is not a root cause. Those are also symptoms of what's happening in your life. So the testing, the supplements that we do in the is a band-aid that we use to bridge that gap while we can address the root cause. So if you're taking supplements to lower your cortisol, but you're not managing what caused that high cortisol in the first place, then you're not addressing the root cause. Then the only thing we're doing is practicing green allopathy, which means we're using supplements, which are, you know, definitely helpful and less side effects, but we're using supplements instead of pharmaceuticals. So what we want to do is go downstream. So the upstream effect is now you're experiencing symptoms of gut health and hormone imbalance. As you dig further, you realize that your symptoms are because of possibly high cortisol, because of possibly high estrogen, because of possibly high an imbalance in your bacteria. And so now we're starting to address that. But you wouldn't be doing yourself justice if you didn't go further downstream and address the root cause. So simple things that you don't need a doctor for or you don't need a prescription for. Eat in a relaxed environment. Chew your food. Take deep breaths before your meal. Avoid eating in a car. Everybody has to do this sometimes where we're grabbing a meal replacement shake or a protein bar on our way out. But that should not be your mainstay for food. Taking time to taste and smell your food, avoiding eating at your desk, stress management practices, those are the things that are going to allow you to address the root cause. I did list some supplements for stress and cortisol as well. Phosphatidylserine is an excellent nutrient that you use to lower cortisol, especially at night if your night levels are spiking and stopping you from sleeping. Ashwagandha and rhodiola are two other herbs. And usually that you can find them in blends used synergistically, but sometimes I will use them individually because a lot of times the blends do not have the right doses that you need to address the imbalance. Sleep. I cannot stress about this enough. Sleep is where all the reset happens. It's where all the healing happens. It's where all the inflammation. It's where all the inflammation lowering hormones, the feel good hormones, the neurotransmitters, that those are all secreted at night. So this would be the number one root cause to address. If your sleep is not on point, then everything else we're doing is sort of a Band-Aid. So a consistent bedtime at 10 p.m. Research shows that between around 10 p.m., 10 to 10:30 p.m. is optimal melatonin production. So going to sleep, so keeping a consistent bedtime around 10 p.m. it will be most optimal. Oftentimes, initially, you go to bed if that's too early for you. If you're used to sleeping at 11 or 12, you go to bed at 10, you'll wake up at 1 or 2 and be wide awake. And it will take time for your body to kind of adjust to that and reset your circadian rhythm. And then things that you can do to sync your circadian rhythm. Waking up first thing in the morning and exposing yourself to sunlight. And not staring at your phone. Most of us, the first thing we do is wake up and see, what messages did we get, what emails came in. But just allowing yourself 20 minutes to wake up calmly, peacefully. Maybe just stand by a window and let some light come in. If you're living in Canada where you don't have a lot of light half the year, maybe you get yourself one of those sun lamps and keep them by your bedside so that when you wake up in the morning, your first exposure is not to a screen to blue light, but your first exposure is to sunlight. And then the same thing as at night. As the sun starts to set, you start to dim the lights, maybe wear blue light blocking glasses if you really have to work at night. You can replace the light bulbs in your bedroom with amber light bulbs or red light bulbs, which does not contain the blue light, which interferes with our circadian rhythm. Turning off your screens or limiting stimulating activity. Reading a book would be excellent, but limiting stimulating activity by around 9:30 p.m. Having a practice at night that really just calms your nervous system, whether it's journaling, whether it's a brain dump, getting all that, all the thoughts out so that monkey mind can calm down. A yoga nidra practice. So yoga nidra is an excellent way to kind of calm the nervous system. There are so many apps that are free. I like one that's called Insight Timer. You can download that on your phone. I think you have to pay for it now. But they have a guided meditation or guided yoga nidra, and you can download it to your phone. So you can put your phone on airplane mode and then listen to that before you fall asleep. Simple things like legs up the wall or some simple yoga stretches. And then optimizing your sleep environment. So reducing EMF, which means putting your phone on airplane mode at night, or definitely not keeping your phone by your head. Cool temperatures, blackout shades, eye masks, whatever it is that you need to create that cave-like dark environment. Really, if there is one thing that you take away today, and if there is one thing you can implement tonight, this is what you would start implementing, because this is what's going to this will do wonders to lower your inflammation and lower your cortisol while you work on all the other stuff to improve and support your gut and hormone health. And then the endocrine disruptors. So, like I said, it is absolutely impossible to remove every trace of endocrine disruptors from your house. And when you're first starting on this journey, it can be super overwhelming. It can feel expensive. It can feel overwhelming. You don't know where to start. You will feel like you're surrounded by toxins everywhere you turn and look. But you can start slow. Pick one aspect of your lifestyle to clean out. If you're looking at products, this link that I have on my screen, ewg.org/skin deep. If you just Google Skin Deep, EWG Skin Deep, you can search your bath products, your makeup, your household cleaners, any products that you can put in, and it will rate them for you from a 1 to 10, obviously 1 being the safest and 10 being the worst that you can do. And then as you're finishing up a bottle, replace it with something that's better. If you have candles or air fresheners or Glade plugins in your house, do me a favor and throw those away today. Those are the absolute worst. They have artificial fragrances in them, which are pretty much xenoestrogens and endocrine disruptors. And those are an easy way to reduce your exposure. We don't need that. You can have essential oils. You can have, open your windows. That's the best way to kind of let smells out of your house. Bring in flowers if you want a better smell. Reducing canned foods, BPA-free cans does not mean anything. BPA is a marketing gimmick. In most cases, BPA has been replaced by BPS, which is actually more hormonally reactive. So the only cans that I will use is maybe coconut milk because it's not acidic and it doesn't get hot. But other than that, tomatoes should not be bought in a can because it's acidic. And no matter what you do, some of that lining from the inside of your cans will leach into it. Anything else, for the most part, you can get in a glass bottle. Choosing organic as much as possible. Now that can get expensive. So again, the EWG is an excellent resource. They have something called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. If you just download that list and have it on your phone or quickly Google it when you're on the grocery store, anything that's on the Dirty Dozen list, mostly things like apples, berries, peaches, nectarines, should absolutely be bought organic. Anything that's on the Clean 15 doesn't matter. They're actually, they've studied it and tested it, and even the conventional form of that either doesn't absorb as many pesticides or they don't use as many pesticides, so it's okay. Filtering your water. So most of us who live in the US, I don't know about Canada, we think our water is safe, and our water is safe as in you are not going to die from a parasitic or a bacterial or a viral infection because the water that comes into your house is safe. It's treated with chlorine. However, the EWG, again, has tested the water independently, and most of our waters that comes in our taps is contaminated with volatile organic compounds, higher levels of arsenic, higher levels of lead if your pipes are made of lead, higher levels of if you're in the US, you can go on EWG and search. You can put in your zip code, and it will show you which toxins, which chemicals, which heavy metals are higher than the safe limit. Now, I do want to make sure that you're not going to die immediately from drinking tap water. But what the government deems as safe limits is not the same as what EWG deems as a safe limit. So having a reverse osmosis system in your house, if you can, if that's an option, or getting Mountain Valley spring water, if you're in the US, that's an excellent source that delivered to your house is an additional step to preventing endocrine disruptors and xenoestrogens, and heavy metal exposure and volatile organic compounds. And then, of course, opting for glass, ceramic, or stainless steel over plastic. And exercise. If you guys are, the best form of exercise to start with, if you don't have access to a gym or a trainer, just walk. Just start by walking. Up your steps. If you're walking 10,000 steps, up them to 15,000 steps. If you're walking 15,000, up them. Just walking after a meal will lower your blood sugar. Again, blood sugar balance will contribute to cortisol balance as well. Yoga, it really doesn't matter what type of exercise you choose. Consistency and moving your body is key, and that's going to resolve inflammation. What does exercise have to do with gut health and hormone health? Lowering inflammation, lowering your parasympathetics, regulating your nervous system. And that is it. So that was a lot of information. If you want to get a hold of me, these are the different ways you can get a hold of me. There's my website, my Instagram, and my email address. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm pretty responsive on DMs. But we have 10 minutes, we have 15 minutes. I'm happy to take questions or answer any questions that you guys can have. Okay, then someone has dropped for another call. Chrissy is asking, what is the optimal cool temperature at nighttime? Chrissy, I think, don't quote me on this. I think the latest research showed like 69 degrees. I could be wrong. I keep mine at 72. That seems to work for me. So I think you can play around with that and see, see what works for you and what keeps your body cool. Like you should not be waking up in the middle of the night, tossing, turning, throwing off covers, sweating, etc. So anything that keeps that body temperature low. 69, our houses here get up to 85 and 90. So 69 is really not possible. So we keep ours around 74 to 72, but the cooler you can would probably be best. Anyone else? No worries, Drew. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It was great to have you. Yeah, mushroom coffees. I love mushroom coffees. I think mushrooms in general are fantastic. I don't drink coffee, so personally, I don't think that it actually replaces the taste of coffee, is what I've been told by a lot of my patients who love their coffee. But mushrooms are fantastic. Dandy Blend, the one I referenced earlier, is not a mushroom, but Dandy Blend is similar. It's a dandy coffee or a Dandy Blend coffee, and that one supports your gut health, your liver health. So, but mushroom coffees. So the one I like is what is it called? Mudwater, Mudwtr. Mudwater is it's a blend of mushrooms. Their morning blend actually even has a little bit of caffeine in it. Their night blend has turmeric and ashwagandha and other kind of calming blends. Four Sigmatic is another mushroom blend I've used that I really like. I usually add it to my protein shakes. I think it's just excellent for boosting brain health, immune health, gut health. Yeah, they have countless benefits. So absolutely. Yes. Safe candles. Yes, I don't know any brands. I personally I use essential oils. So I just have a diffuser and I use organic essential oils. The other thing I've done is kind of created like an herbal simmer pot. So you can just do hot water, add in cinnamon, a little bit of vanilla extract. Sometimes you can add an entire orange and get fragrances that way. But there are safer candles, like a soy wax candle that's, handmade, homemade candles with essential oils only. Those would be safer. But none of the products that none of the bath and body type products or the over the counter type products. But yes, I have seen soy essential oil candles. I've seen things that you can get at a farmer's market that people are making at home would probably be safe. Anyone else? All right, let's see. What does this question say? So this question says, going back to the circadian rhythm, why do some people experience upset stomach when waking up earlier than the normal time, such as intentionally waking up at 3 to 4 a.m. to catch a flight? And how can we help our gut? That's a really good question. And I don't know specifically why you would have an upset stomach if you wake up early. It is possible, just theorizing, that maybe you woke yourself up at 3 or 4 a.m. when you should not have been waking up, and you caused your cortisol to spike. That spike in cortisol could lead to a temporary kind of stomach acid imbalance and in production, although I don't know that there's any physiological evidence to that. So I don't know specifically, but how can we help our gut? We help our gut by everything that we talked about today. And if you're specifically talking about helping your gut at that 3, 4 a.m., a product that you could use is DGL, because DGL will neutralize that stomach acid and DGL will soothe the stomach. So that is or slippery elm or DGL, marshmallow. You can get lozenges as well. that would be a good temporary fix if that's just a one-time thing that you're experiencing. But if this is a chronic issue or a long-term issue, you're going to address your whole gut health and kind of address everything that we talked about today. Yeah, sure. What else, you guys? And you can unmute yourself. We're done, so you can, jump in and ask questions. Anyone else? No? Okay. So as a thank you and a bonus for attending this webinar live, keep an eye out on your emails. I'm going to be sending you guys a high protein guide. So it's a labor of love. It took a few hours to put it together. It is a compilation of high protein, nutrient dense, low carb meals. There's breakfast options, lunch options, dinner options, and hopefully gut healthy recipes. I've tried to include some brand recommendations for you as well, some substitutes if you guys are allergic to dairy or if you want different options. So I'm hoping that you find that really helpful. So keep an eye out on your emails. You'll be getting a couple of emails in the next few days with that bonus guide. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking an hour to be here. Thank you. And if you have any questions that come up after today, just send me an email or reach out to me by Instagram. Thank you so much. Any last minute questions before I turn this off?
No questions. Thank you, Nadia. Dr. Nadia, this was amazing. So helpful. So much good information.
I'm so glad you were able to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thanks a
Bye.
lot.